So I think before we begin, I think it's good to introduce ourselves, so let's do that now. My name is Alex.
I'm Freddie.
I'm Octavian.
I'm Jobin.
And I'm Laban.
So today we of course are standing before you as Team UK to present our solution to this year's business case study. So without further ado, I think we can get started. All right, so the way this, okay, I think one of our slides isn't working. Okay, ignore that. So the way this presentation works is we are of course presented with three main potential solutions to the problem of the middle corridor being a complete lack of efficiency. The three main solutions are a causeway, a tunnel, and a bridge. We have decided to analyze a bridge as one of our three options due to the depth of the Caspian Sea making a causeway infeasible and a tunnel being a far more expensive alternative to the tunnel, a tunnel being far more expensive alternative to the bridge with similar benefits. So the way this presentation is going to work is we are first going to do a cost analysis of the bridge, and we're going to show you that it is economically infeasible. We will show that it's environmentally unsustainable, and we're going to lastly conclude that it's far too risky a project to continue. So we're going to first look at the key stakeholders being Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, China and the EU, and of course the residents of Baku and Aktau. The key questions we will address are the profitability, whether it can be financed, and the risks and mitigations, and you can see the challenges we will address above, which we'll go into more detail later.
There are three main corridors in Eurasia for cargo. The northern corridor and the middle corridor, firstly, are an average of $94 per ton. However, the northern corridor provide a shorter transit time. Despite this, Russian sanctions has led to diversions from the northern trade route to the middle corridor. However, we're not taking full advantage of this due to supply chain bottlenecks caused by limited ferry capacity. Thus, we are evaluating the economic feasibility of a bridge or any alternative solution.
So we have basically created a model for the whole bridge, looking at the exact number of piers we want to have, which would be 7,600, among other factors. We can do this later with the questions. We can talk to exactly how we've come to our cost, but the crucial point of this slide is showing you that the final cost with a 25% contingency for anything that can go wrong will be $38 billion for the construction of the bridge.
Now let's analyze the economic benefits. We project a growth in middle corridor trade of 26.9%. This is caused by an increase in induced demand for trade through the middle corridor due to the 10-day fall in transit time. And we also, this also includes diversion from the northern corridor to the middle corridor due to trade diversion.
Additionally, in Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, we have projected an increase in GDP of $23.56 billion each, consisting of the value of the infrastructure project alongside the investment multiplier. Furthermore, we have projected 57,000 new jobs will be created, both direct and indirect.
To project revenue, we used the Usan Bridge as a case study. This gave us an estimated toll of $44 per ton of cargo. Combining this with World Bank projections for trade volume, this gives us a total revenue of $500 million per year. However, when taking into account trade diversion and creation, this number rises to $636 million per year. So, is this project profitable? In a short answer, no. Our MPV, using a 10% discount rate in perpetuity, was calculated to be minus $22.28 billion, with an IRR of 0.66%. Using a more reasonable time frame of 100 years, the IRR is actually negative. This project will be
a strategic investment that China is a main beneficiary of. This would be lower than commercial rates, but not, since it does not constitute as humanitarian aid, it cannot be a concessional rate. We project a 10-year grace period in order to allow for construction, and then a 40-year maturity. The bridge would then be used as collateral. We decided to reject the idea of a private-public partnership since it's simply unrealistic that there would be sufficient investor appetite due to the huge costs, upfront costs, and huge risks associated with the project.
We have calculated 42 million tons of CO2 emissions simply from the construction of the bridge, as well as the development of the raw materials for the bridge, along with a 140% increase in CO2 emissions per ton with the new use of transport following the formation of a bridge. Along with the devastating effects of the CO2 emissions, we have shown that there is a massive impact on wildlife, with marine wildlife expected to fall from 10 to 50,000 using the case studies of a Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau bridge, as well as the Ersund bridge. This has also had a devastating impact on migration, impacting both seals and birds, with 30% of seal haul-out areas becoming disturbed and unsuitable. The EIA, or the Environmental Impact Assessment, is a method of legal and regulatory framework to justify the environmental feasibility of a project. As seen, we can see that these projects were rejected following their CO2 emissions, with 10 million tons of CO2 emissions produced from the recent oil well near Gatwick. With our construction costs, with our construction CO2 emissions almost 4 times larger than this, we find it unlikely that this will be accepted by the EIA.
For the essence of time, I'll provide a quick summary of the risks. We have, first of all, foreign dependency. So this is a result of having the BRI fund this initiative, and China may leverage this, as they did, for example, in Sri Lanka. Second of all, underestimating costs. However, we provided a 25% contingency rate. Thirdly, geopolitical tensions, such as in 2018, disputes with Iran and Russia led to the rejection of a Trans-Caspian oil pipeline. A similar scenario may occur. But finally, and the most extreme risk, is environmental. The bridge is proposed to be built over a fault line, and therefore seismic activity could compromise the bridge. And the World Bank estimates that there's a 10% chance of this in the next 50 years.
Clearly, the construction of a fixed Caspian sea link is not a feasible solution. Instead, we propose an alternative that takes us from the short run to the long run. Our short-run solution includes AI optimization, which will increase fuel efficiency by 10 to 15%, whilst also increasing route efficiency by 27% through automated loading and stuffing of cargo containers. President Aliyev has already pledged $12 million to port modernization and AI optimization, so we recommend doubling this amount so you can double the efficiency and speed of implementation of AI optimization. In the long run, we propose a construction of 5 new freight railways. Currently in Azerbaijan, there is only one railway with a maximum speed of 27 kilometers per hour, which handles 34 to 46% of all trade volume. Freight railway is clearly very important for trade in the Middle Corridor. Therefore, we propose these 5 new freight railways to connect Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, each with a maximum speed of 100 kilometers per hour and increased efficiency compared to a bridge. Using estimates from the BTK railway, we estimated a cost of $10 billion.
So, to conclude our overall argument here, we've been pitched with 3 possible solutions, which were a causeway, a tunnel, and a bridge. We've chosen to analyze a bridge as the most feasible option, and yet we have still been able to show that this is not a viable solution. Economically, it's not feasible. No one will want to invest in it. The environmental impact is too huge. It is unlikely to get past the legislative measures which protect the environment. And lastly, it is far too risky. The new solutions we have proposed and that Tavi has outlined will cut the cost to 25% of the initial proposition.
Saves 95% of the time.
Maximizes stakeholder value.
reduces environmental impact,
and preserve national autonomy compared to the Caspian Sea connector.
Thank you very much, Team UK. Good and easy to follow presentation. I have a few questions would like your position on. First one regarding risk mitigation plan. I've seen you incorporating geopolitical tension and escalation as a negative effect. What about the easing of sanction risks, and how would it impact your position? For example, northern route again becoming as a more feasible alternative, reducing the volume of, let's say, the corridor overall.
Okay, so thank you for your question. We see that the middle corridor, regardless of the northern corridor, is still becoming even more important as China's trade to the EU constantly increases. So, regardless of whether sanctions ease with Russia or not, this is still an important question to answer because trade volume through the middle corridor is already increasing, with I think around 5 to 10% of trade from China to the EU coming through this corridor. However, with sanctions easing between Russia, it could potentially divert trade back up to the north. However, with our solution, trade will become just as efficient to go through the middle corridor and actually increase demand in the middle corridor and potentially divert even from the maritime corridor through the Suez Canal.
Also, within our calculations, in order to predict the growth in trade as a result of this project, we predicted about a 10% rise in demand for transit through the middle corridor as a result of diversion from the northern corridor, but actually a 15% rise in simply just induced demand for trade as a result of lower costs. And so we think it would still, improving trade links in general through the middle corridor would provide growth in trade through the middle corridor, regardless of whether there are Russian sanctions.
Thank you very much. And second question is about trade growth assumption you have on one of your early pages. 26.9% growth you've predicted. I would love to understand the assumption drivers.
So wait, can you just repeat your question one more time, just for extra clarity?
26.9% trade growth assumption you have on one of early pages, previous pages, in terms of trade growth.
Okay, great.
What is the assumption based on?
So we looked at a paper. Do you guys remember what it was called? It's a paper done by two economists in an academic journal, which suggests that for every extra day in delays, that is the equivalent of a 0.6 to 2.1% VAT rate on the goods. Then using that, we calculated the potential decrease in time that would be facilitated by the construction of the bridge, and then we incorporated that to essentially simulate a decrease in cost using the research paper studied. Having done this, we found a World Bank paper which suggested a cross-price elasticity of demand between freight travel in the middle channel and the northern channel. What we then did is obviously we used the cross-price elasticity of demand and decrease in price to suggest a decrease in demand in the northern channel. We then assumed that all of this would transfer to the middle channel because obviously these are competing services. And so having done that, we calculated, I don't remember the exact percentage increase, but then on top of this, we also looked at the overall increase in trade, and we did this using another World Bank paper, which included a decrease in time for freight travel compared to an increase in overall demand for this compared to like air travel and other quantities. We combined those two percentages and we end with the figure that you mentioned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Team UK, for great presentation. Earlier you mentioned about like this is the strategic project and we can get the interest with 3% from Chinese banks and institutions, but also while presenting your financials, you mentioned that you will have a WACC weighted average cost of capital around 10%, right? 10% during your financial calculation, and you also mentioned we can get the borrowing with 3%. What's the other assumptions which are increasing our WACC? Like, what are the key assumptions in your WACC which makes it 10?
So we used a very aggressive discount rate because there's so much uncertainty, especially in this area with Russian sanctions, and so they might be lifted. There's a lot of uncertainty about this project, and due to such a long time span, we're unsure about, like, there's uncertainty over costs, there's uncertainty over interest rates, and so we used that for our 10% figure, and then for predicting 3%, we looked at previous BRI initiatives and found that humanitarian aid was often around 2%. However, this couldn't constitute as humanitarian, and commercial rates by state-owned Chinese banks were around 6%. And thus, we decided that since it's a strategic project, we'd find a midpoint between the two. But we thought it would, in order for it to be financially feasible for Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan to undertake the project, it would have to be closer to 2%, and thus we found 3%.
Thank you for the great presentation. My question is regarding the capex that you mentioned for Caspian Connector project. Can you elaborate on how did you come up with that capex amount? Yes.
The cost. Oh, lovely. So
also, just to add up on that, if you can open, do you have the financial model over here? So for us to see your key revenue drivers or any other drivers, if you can show.
Okay, so the way we're going to answer this is I'm going to first talk about how we calculate the cost, and then Freddie's going to talk about how we calculated the revenue. Given what we already knew about the percentage increase in total trade, and also using a World Bank projection for trade by the end of the construction lifetime, which we've estimated at 10 years. Combine those, obviously we can have the revenue per year. So the way we calculate the cost is we looked at 3 other bridges: the Danyang Kunshan Bridge, I'll be honest, I'll butcher the pronunciation, so I won't bother, but we looked at 3 bridges of similar depth. We looked at the deepest bridge in the world, given that the Caspian Sea across our route will average at a depth of 190 meters. That is twice as deep as the next deepest bridge. So therefore we used the similar width of our piers. So these are obviously the stuff going into the ground. So we picked a 7-meter diameter for those piers. Obviously, we can use simple math to calculate the total volume of all these piers, given the average amount of piers per unit length, looking at a similarly long and heavy bridge, which was the Danyang Kunshan Bridge. So we rested about 7,800 piers in total. And obviously, we can now calculate the volume of concrete required for these piers. We chose to have an iron core, which was similar to the Padma Bridge, which was the deepest bridge, because they've got similar water current levels. Combine those, we get the iron cost and concrete cost of the piers. We know the commercial rates, we know purchasing economies of scale, and we find the cost for that. We then look at the actual bridge length itself. We decided on our bridge width of 31 meters, the bridge thickness, which was about 2 meters of concrete, multiply those together, and that's how we came up with a value of around $31 billion. All we then did is we added our 25% contingency cost in case anything goes wrong, which took it up to 38 billion for our total cost of production of the bridge. We've decided to split that up into essentially split it up in 10, because we estimated the construction time of 10 years based on the size of the bridge, comparing it to the other 3 bridges that we took in our case study. And so now Freddie will talk about how we came up with the revenues.
Yeah, so we found a revenue as a product of tolls, so 1 toll on freight and 1 toll on passengers. The passenger toll was deemed to be insignificant using the current tourism and migration, even accounting for the increase in tourism because of this bridge. It still wasn't enough to make a major impact. And we found the freight toll by using the Usen Bridge as a case study with very limited data, as a lot of this isn't disclosed publicly. So this is from 2005, a bridge in Denmark, and we used that value, converted it into euros, and then accounting for inflation from 2005, extrapolated it to today. Then we converted this into dollars, and we adjusted for the average difference in weight of a train to get us a per ton value of $44. Then using the trade volume and trade diversion statistics as discussed earlier, we calculated total revenue as a product of that.
And then lastly, we also looked at the maintenance cost per year after the project's completion, which the number should be there somewhere. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was okay, no, I do remember it off the top of my head. It was 380 million per year. And the way we did this is we looked at the maintenance cost for the longest bridge in the world, which is Danyang Kruchan, and we subtract them, and that gave us our profit per year for our average rate of return, which is negative, as shown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team UK. Let's applaud our next finalist team, Mexico. Good afternoon. We are Team Mexico, and today we will be explaining our solution for what we call the Caspian Connector. We would like to begin by addressing the importance of the Middle Corridor. As a key player in connecting European trade to China, the European corridor uses the Middle Corridor uses the Caspian Sea to bypass Russia, which has become increasingly relevant in the recent years, given the geopolitical tensions in the region. The Caspian corridor, however, is facing several problems at the minute, as global warming has caused the sea levels to decrease, meaning ports and boats will have trouble completing this course in the following years. This is why we will create a more efficient solution to be able to continue this international trade. The key stakeholders in our project will be Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia, and the EU, which all have the shared goal of fostering international cooperation and trade, and at the same time, kind of steering away from Russia, given its situation with Ukraine, which is why it is very relevant to do this today, not in 10 years or maybe 15.
The underlying assumptions of our project is that our demands for building materials will be met, that the northern and southern routes will remain undesirable due to geopolitical tensions, that we will be able to get a concessionary loan from China as a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and that if we're able to reach a depth of at least 40 meters, we will be able to mitigate the risk of the sea level of the Caspian Sea shrinking 7 meters in the following 100 years.
Right now, the Middle Corridor connects Europe and China, going through Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. It takes approximately 15 to 20 days to complete the journey and carries around 4 million tons in the past year. However, this number is going to increase in the next years. Right now, the pressing issues are the poorly developed infrastructure and the geopolitical tensions of the region.
Recently, China, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan have been discussing improving the throughput of the Middle Corridor, namely through the Caspian Sea, which is its biggest bottleneck. To do this, the plan is to build a bridge from Alat to Aydukurik or Aktau. The problem is a 2018 convention, which states that all this area in the middle is common ground, and so it's not so politically feasible to just build a bridge out of nowhere. However, for the sake of argument, if we decide to exclude this political infeasibility and only take into account the exclusive economic barriers, we obtain this map of the portion of the Caspian Sea which we can use. Now, we can analyze the different costs of different types of bridges and minimize the cost of our bridges depending on the level of depth at which we build. Then, depending on the exact level of depth is how much that exact bridge will cost per kilometer. If we corroborate this cost with the JEPCO database of the depth of the Caspian Sea, we can construct a cost map of the Caspian Sea for the building of a new bridge. Then we can turn this into a grid and apply Dijkstra's algorithm to find the least cost path for the bridge, which results in a whopping 700 kilometers and over $200 billion in spending. Needless to say, we found this to be completely economically unfeasible, let alone the political implications, and so we decided to go through with a project that came still with dramatic reductions in time, but also with more reliable expenditures.
So instead of the Caspian Bridge, we have a much more feasible proposal, the Caspian Connector. It has three main parts: railways, floatable ports, and ultra-large cargo vessels. Now, the railways are maximum 15-kilometer fixed bridges over the sea that will be connected to the local railway networks in Yamala, in Azerbaijan, and in Aktau, in Kazakhstan. Now, they will trace the most efficient route to reach an approximate 35 to 40 meters of depth. Now, at the end of these bridges, we will have floatable ports, which will automatically adapt to the decreasing sea levels of the Caspian Sea, meanwhile all the other infrastructure struggles to not become unusable. And now, due to the depth of 35 to 40 meters of the floatable ports, it will enable deep water transportation and the use of ultra-large cargo vessels. And this will monumentally increase the quantity of cargo that one can transport across the Caspian Sea in one ship in one trip. As a whole, the project would cost 8.5 billion, and it would reduce the time in between 50 to 70%.
So to summarize, our proposed route goes from Yalama to Aktau, skipping the entire usual route to make it significantly shorter without having to bridge so much, and we would be using the railways to make this shorter. Our proposed timeline will take approximately 8 to 9 years with 4 phases, consisting of feasibility and design, the initial construction of new ports and fleets, the construction of the superstructure and planning for the bridges, and finally the segmentation between the bridge and the floatable port.
We understand that this solution may be seen as a little bit new, a little bit different, but there have been several proven examples like this that have worked in the past, such as a bridge constructed in Shanghai and one in Abu Dhabi, which have become world-leading offshore seaports, such as the one we're proposing to build.
Now, comparing both projects, in the legal framework, the Caspian Bridge is simply a hassle. The convention in the legal status of the Caspian Sea states that each country only has a 15-kilometer sovereign area. Our project falls within that 15-kilometer sovereign area. Meanwhile, the Caspian Bridge could be blocked by Russia or Iran, arguing that it impedes their free use of the joint area. Now, comparing in terms of efficiency, the Caspian Bridge would cost a whopping 200 billion and reduce the time to 1/6 of the current average time. Meanwhile, our project would have 1/10 of that budget, the 8.5 billion, and additionally reduce the time from 50 to 70%, and automatically adapt to the decreasing sea level. Meanwhile, the maintaining costs of the Caspian Bridge would skyrocket. And lastly, on environmental considerations, the Caspian Bridge would simply decimate the Caspian Sea ecosystems. And meanwhile, our project will also have an economical and environmental impact. It will be smaller due to that it's a 10 times smaller project length for the bridge.
Now, in order to pay for a mega project like this, we have to discuss the fact that both the North and the Middle Corridor use FEU tolls of around $3,000 to finance their activities. Now, using an estimated elasticity of negative 0.8 based on market research and academics from the region, we have derived a version of the Laffer curve that focuses on maximizing revenue. Now, we have found that an optimal increase of 12.5% in the toll will result in maximizing revenue. Now, we combine this the optimal FEU toll with a logistic growth model based on historical data to provide a solid revenue projection. However, in order to finance this mega project, we propose to form a bilateral joint venture between the government of Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. We chose this structure instead of a PPP because we want to stay away from private investors due to the very large risk premium that they will demand, not only because of the nature of the project, but also the fact we're focusing on a developing country. Now, we will be dividing the 8.5 billion needed, but with 3 billion in equity that we will get from Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, focusing on a 7% social discount rate, and a 5.5 is the remaining 5.5 from debt from two loans. The first, the China concessional loan on around 2%, and an AIIB loan of 2.8%, giving us an overall WACC of 3.5%. Now, based on this WACC and the future revenue projections, we surmise a net present value of around $200 million and a payback period of about 22 years.
We have constructed the following risk analysis matrix where we considered environmental, political, infrastructural, and financial risks. We'd like to point out that we have mitigated the political risks by constructing only on national waters, and we have mitigated infrastructural risks due to the variable of the sea level by employing floating platforms. It is clear that building a connection between Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan is something worth pursuing from the standpoint of trade. However, doing so through a fixed link in the form of a bridge is not feasible. This is why the Caspian connector that we're proposing is economically, politically, and financially feasible, and this is what we should pursue. Thank you, and we'd like to open the floor to the Q&A section.
Thank you, students. Now you have 10 minutes for question and answer. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
By the way, congratulations for such a great presentation. My question is regarding, there was a slide, I think it was the last slide, comparative case. Yeah, here. Maybe I missed it in your presentation. What is the major factor for you to think that the offshore port connectivity WACC is more preferable than the fixed link bridge? What makes the fixed bridge project WACC more higher?
Yes, thank you. So essentially what makes the risk-adjusted WACC for the fixed link bridge a lot higher than the WACC that we calculated for our solution is based on the legal implications of getting the Chinese loan from the concession 2% interest rate for financing the bridge. The problem is, if we do the fixed link bridge, going back to, here, we would essentially be passing through the area that is supposed to be common area for all the Caspian Sea. The problem with this is that if we get this 2% concessional loan, we are essentially putting up the bridge as collateral in the case of defaulting, which would mean that China would essentially own the parts of the bridge, which would violate the International 2018 Convention, making it essentially an unviable way of financing. Therefore, we have to take away the China concessional loan that is only 2%, and we would have to go look for other types of debt, for example, in the World Bank, or maybe through the private sector. And of course, this would increase, obviously, the cost of capital. Thank you.
Additionally, the floatable ports are the only type of infrastructure that adjusts to the decreasing sea level. Meanwhile, a bridge would certainly hold. The maintenance costs of its exposure, due to the decreasing the sea level, would simply skyrocket the maintenance costs.
Thank you very much. Really nice presentation. I have more conceptual question. If you have to advise to the both governments, Azerbaijani and Kazakhstan governments, why do they have to choose such project with a lot of capital, capex, and etc., over like other, let's say, projects as, for instance, if there is some main project for healthcare or other segments? Could you please just elaborate more and with like more concrete suggestions why this project should go first?
So the current welfare in these countries is thanks to this middle corridor and the oil exports. And now this is only possible if you have export infrastructure. If you do not improve anything in this export infrastructure and stay with the same infrastructure and the decreasing sea levels, the ports will become unusable, and therefore it will be even a greater loss of healthcare in the future and other social benefits and programs if you do not do anything about it right now. It's a trade-off between future welfare and current welfare.
Adding on to that, the Caspian corridor is estimated to add up to $1 to $2 billion in GDP for both Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. And this is not accounting for any type of multiplier. So if these ports, which we currently use, are unavailable in the future due to the decreasing in sea level or if inefficiency, then we will be potentially losing all of that, and it would become a sort of opportunity cost. So we want to not only keep investing in our GDP and obviously growing as nations, but we also want to strengthen our position geopolitically and, well, our relevance.
And also, one last thing. Exports of oil and gas are crucial for Azerbaijan's economy as well as Kazakhstan. And right now, they have a really good opportunity because its neighbors, Russia and Iran, are distracted with their own conflicts. Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, China, and the EU can join together and do this project right now to benefit themselves and not be so reliant on these unstable countries.
Construction of such large-scale capex-heavy projects obviously subject to certain sensitivities and delays in terms of construction, and we've seen many of similar regional projects facing those delays, say for a few years, up to 5 years, even more. How would your project feasibility would react to such sort of delays in construction or in implementation of project?
Maybe let me also add to this question. Since offshore ports are a bit, let's say, in terms of examples, less than the bridges, any risks during the implementation and building this offshore port compared to a bridge that you guys took into account?
Yes. So addressing the first question, a very important part of our project is essentially our revenue stream. We adjusted the revenue stream based on the Laffer curve, and essentially we will be starting to increase the FEU toll already in 2025, which would mean that we will be essentially already using the existing corridor to finance the project. So in the case that costs go up or we take more years, this wouldn't change our revenue stream, which is very important, and we could be very flexible with the cost as pushing back the project a couple years. This is because currently it's estimated that the sea level loss would be 9 meters in 100 years. Our project's building is about 8 to 9 years. So essentially we still have a lot of flexibility to address the project. Now, concerning the seaports, there have been previous examples, for example, in China and in Khalifa, and we essentially constructed our plan in a way that we start to build by 2026 in order to address problems, for example, in the design, logistics, in 2025. Specifically, some problems that concern the project are the weather events, seismic activity. So we essentially took the rest of 2025 for design, focusing on optimizing the bridges in order to mitigate a lot of the risks associated with the actual construction.
Additionally, I would like to add that the ports, we've scheduled their construction because they're more risky. We decided to construct them very early on, starting in 2026, and we determined that the time of their construction would not be nearly as much as the bridges. So there would be a lot of gap in between the finishing of the ports and the finishing of the bridges, which the bridges we assume to be a lot more reliable. So there would be a lot of wiggle room for the entire project to still be done in 9 years, but for the ports to take slightly longer.
Just lastly, the floatable ports are the best option for this type of ports, because if instead one would like to build a fixed port, both the costs and the construction times are greater. So our floatable ports already mitigate construction risks.
I have two minor questions regarding your proposal offshore port. First, have you been able to look at the sustainability impact of building such an offshore port? What could be potential environmental impact of that project? The second is like I just forgot my second question. I can ask later, just by the time you answer my first question.
Okay, so on environmental concerns, the floatable ports are also an advantageous choice because instead of building fixed ports, the floatable ports don't have that much impact on underwater ecosystems. The part of our project that would be environmentally nocive would be the bridges, the small bridges. However, it is small in comparison to the proposed Caspian Bridge.
And the second question, which I just remembered, have you been able to assess the logistic time implication of such a project? Would it bring any, let's say, logistic time improvement on the logistic times? Because it was one of the key problems of the case that needs to be addressed.
So yeah, that's one of the main reasons we chose to do this project instead of the bridge, because we recognized that the bridge, one of its main advantages was to greatly reduce the travel time. And the way we accounted for that here was the marginally more effective bridges that make it slightly closer, but really the change in trade route from instead of going around the peninsula to go straight from Yalama, and the construction of the port would facilitate that. Usually, if you wanted to change that trade route, you would have to build a port on Yalama, which is not currently a plan or anything that's already developed. So we decided that if we're already building ports offshore, might as well get closer while we can.
Thank you, Team Mexico, for your thoughtful presentation and strong performance. Now, please join me welcoming to our next finalist team, Russia.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Dear ladies and gentlemen, imagine a 300-kilometer leap across the Caspian Sea, facilitating trade, cutting transit times, and connecting markets worth billions. The Caspian Connector isn't just an infrastructure project, it's an opportunity for Azerbaijan, and now we're gonna prove it. Meet our team, Andrei, Arina, George, Daria, and Alex. We are happy to present our solution.
Okay, let's start with the analysis of our main stakeholders and their problems. Europe is one of the essential figures. It's got its largest import share from China, and it wants to expand its influence on the Central Asia, as well as diversify its oil imports. Then there is China and Asia, who are the key stakeholders in this situation. They want an alternative route to the existing ones and to cut their transportation costs to maximize their profit. And lastly, there is Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, who provide the connection between the two parties and are the two already existing big trading hubs with the potential for the revenue from the bridge. Let's analyze the main routes. First one is the Northern Corridor, which has a medium shipping time, which is approximately 20 days, and it has average costs, not really differentiating from the other routes. But it has some political risks and legal complications connected to the sanctions from the Europe. Then there is the maritime route, which is the longest one with a shipping time nearly 50 days, but it is the cheapest one and the most common one. Though it has some risks connected to the... Okay. Let's move on to the middle corridor. It is the shortest path, but it is rather costly. Though the direct transportation through the bridge, It is the more efficient route than the shipping by the sea, but it also cuts costs from the air freight. Well, it is the best connection for the two parties that are Europe and China.
Okay, let's go to other legal, environmental, and technological considerations. There are two main international conventions about the Caspian Sea. According to them, we should pay attention to the other Caspian countries' sectors, take care of nature, and also provide accessibility to sea trade in the Caspian Sea. Of course, bridge construction can lead to negative consequences for nature. For example, noise pollution can lead to a large damage for different types of fishes, so we should work steadily and with some restrictions. Also, it can be oil pollution and destruction of the bottom ecosystem, so we should use safety technologies and also take constant monitoring for ecosystem. Also, in this table, you can see our main solutions, our main options for solution for the problem. As you can see, the bridge and floating tunnels option has the second lowest costs and the highest financial results and also positive impact. Although it isn't very fast and has some risks for environment and trading, we think that this is the best option, so we chose it, and now we will explain you why. In these two graphs, you can see the specifications of the available technologies for our project. As you can see, among the different types of bridges, the submerged floating tunnels is the best because of its medium costs and high eco-friendliness. If we talk about different types of piles, we decided to choose underwater board piles because of its lower price and higher speed in comparison with hydraulic pressing, and also relatively safety for nature.
Our solution, Silk Road 2.0, is a transformational infrastructure project that combines 250 on-water bridge with 50 kilometers underwater floating tunnels, especially fit for the deep areas of the Caspian Sea. This technology was developed in Norway, providing it safety and efficiency. We'll also install 10 multifunctional platforms that will support our bridge and also allow us to extract oil for additional profit. We'll also install oiling pipes in our bridge to provide efficient transportation directly to Azerbaijan. Finally, a part of our solution is an on-land railway that will reduce our costs and make our solution cost-efficient.
We believe that environmental concerns are crucial, aren't they? This is why our team prepared handouts for your convenience, and you can refer them throughout our presentation.
As you can see on the map, our solution is indeed an efficient combination of on-land bridge and underwater floating tunnels. We'll additionally install AI monitoring system and use artificial coral reefs. These two initiatives will help us mitigate all dangerous safety concerns and environmental consequences. As well, we'll achieve net zero environmental impact for our entire project. Our solution is more than just a trade corridor, but it's a combination of technology, sustainability, and collaboration.
Moving on to our calculations, we've developed a financing model. Azerbaijanis and Kazakh national funds control more than 120 billion US dollar in assets. So we will take 30 billions of them and we will use them for this strategic development, these government funds. Secondly, we will use Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and we will offer Chinese investors 20 billion offer for 10% equity and 28% revenue from tariffs. We would also like to point out that Chinese investors already operate in the Caucasian and Central Asian regions, investing more than 35 billion US dollars. And lastly, we will take a 5 billion euro loan from the European Investment Bank, and also it's worth mentioning that this bank really appreciates ESG agenda. Stakeholders' beliefs. We think that Chinese investors will be really interested, since we will provide them with a direct pathway to the emerging markets of Europe. European Investment Bank will secure a reliable borrower, the government. Next, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan will be able to extract more oil and export it abroad, increasing revenues. And lastly, but of course not least, locals and fishermen of Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan will now have cleaner waters.
And now let's move to the financial part of our solution. Our main source of revenue is fees for transportation of goods through our bridge. So we do need to have a tool to estimate this revenue. So we came up with trade flow model. We believe that countries have willingness to trade. Also, each route has its own costs, and costs of route can be found from some formula from price, conditions, and time. All unknown variables from our model could be found using equations from the slide. Speaking of the results, we believe that after the construction of a bridge, trade flow through Azerbaijan would rise by 316%. Also, we need to estimate our costs and revenues. To do that, we made another model. We use Python to run 1 million simulations of 30-year periods. We use a discount rate of 8%. Now, let's quickly run through how our model works. In the beginning of each period, exogenous variables are set randomly. Then endogenous variables are recalculated in accordance of exogenous variables. And in the end, costs and revenues are calculated. Speaking of results, again, of our model, we have an NPV value distribution with a median value of $13 billion and standard deviation of $640 million. Also, there were no simulations with losses. Also, let's run through our financial metrics. We believe that for both Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, the metrics will be the same because the equity is proportional to the initial investment. The IRR will be 16.3% and will reach break-even in 24 years. Also, we'll save $62 for our partners as well as 20 hours of time.
Our solution is more than just a transportation, but it's a dual corridor. By combining on-water bridge and underwater floating tunnels, we'll be able to create a unique mega project that will generate us 13 billion of net present value in just 30 years and will provide great opportunities for sustainability and global trade. As Ilham Aliyev said, by combining our energy potential, digital transformation, and regional partnership, Azerbaijan will become a key driver of Eurasia's future. Thank you for your attention. We'll be glad to tell you more about our solution.
Thank you, students.
Are you ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay, are you ready to? Okay.
Thanks, Team Russia, for the presentation. Really comprehensive and thoughtful approach. Congratulations for that. I would like if you could please go to the stakeholders page. I just had one quick nuance there in terms of, yeah, here, this one. In terms of interest of major stakeholders here. So you refer to the Azerbaijan State Oil Funds, I'm not referring to Kazakhstan, but mainly Azerbaijan part, new oil plans and effective oil transportation. Just for your information, Azerbaijan State Oil Fund is actually the sovereign wealth manager rather than an institution dealing with oil production and transportation matters. Would like to understand the relevance of this stakeholder interest here.
Yeah, thank you for your question. We'll be happy to answer it. The idea here is that we take funds from the Azerbaijani and Kazakhstan National Fund, and this money can be used for strategic development, such as our project. But here we mentioned that our project will also bring revenues, and this revenues can cover costs. So basically, this explaining why Azerbaijan will be better off by implementing this project.
With oil production and transportation matters.
Adding on a bit on my colleague's answer, I would like to say that in general we would expand Azerbaijan oil infrastructure, and Therefore, we believe that this fund in particular will be interested in that as well.
And how is it related to the major problem you have identified in terms of increasing the volume of transport, reducing the duration of the logistics, and other problems you've identified in the early pages?
Thank you very much for your question. The all initiative is just a supplemental measure to our main initiative. So we still plan to construct a bridge, but in addition to that, we'll incorporate 10 platforms that will be needed to support our bridge as well. And through these platforms, to generate more income, we created this new initiative because we'll just generate a synergy between these two initiatives. Thank you.
The approximate location of those platforms are presented on the handouts, 10 of them.
My question is regarding to the revenue source of the model that you presented. What are the key revenue sources that this project will generate?
So our main revenue sources is, first of all, fees for transportation of goods through our bridge. The second biggest source is oil. We're selling oil, which we are developing in places nearby on the bridge. And also there are some sustainable energy initiatives as well, but they account for the smallest part of the revenue.
It's worth mentioning, even though we decrease transportation fees by 4 times, it's $18 instead of 60, almost 4 times. Still, because of the higher volumes, we will get higher revenues.
Okay. And my second question is regarding the cost side. You just mentioned that over 120 billion dollar is required for the project. Do you have any breakdown of that?
So yes, thank you for your question. We'll have a breakdown of our costs here. So basically initial construction cost will be 55 billion, and we break them down by similar initiatives and similar bridges. We divided different areas of our bridges, for instance, the deeper level and the more shallow level. And then we also have regular operating expenses, and there we included the amortization of our bridge, also some environmental expenses, etc.
What are the main contributor of this capex? Is that the floating tunnel or oil pipeline? Can you just approximately?
Yeah, thank you. I think that this thing doesn't work, and we cannot refer to another slide. If you can please change the slide, we can answer the question. Yes. We just need to move 1 page lower. Next page.
So even though we cannot see the model right now, the main contributor would be just a normal bridge because it is 250 kilometers bridge. The costs for 1 kilometer would be lower than the cost for the tunnel because tunnel is a more advanced technology, but overall it is the highest cost, yeah.
To be concisive, to be particular, price of a normal bridge, which is the longest 250 kilometers, is approximately $100 million per kilometer, and our tunnels under the water are the most costly. They cost around $500 million per kilometer because it's a new technology and it's much more complicated and difficult.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now let's welcome our Singapore team. They're joining us online.
Hi judges, may I start now?
Are you ready?
Yeah, we are ready.
Okay, you can start.
Good evening judges, we are Team Singapore, and today we proudly present the Caspian Connector, redefining trade infrastructure between Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. This presentation will identify the main problems faced in cross-Caspian trade, propose a strategy directed at raising demand and adapting to climate change, and assess feasibility and adaptiveness. Trade between the two countries is in a perfect storm. Ecological disruptions have already shaved off 150 million a year from the ferry link. Unpredictable winds delay vessels multiple times a month, creating costly anchor queues. The shrinking Caspian Sea makes docking and loading inconsistent and risky. Extreme seasonal weather, with summer temperatures over 40 degrees and winter ice halting operations for up to 5 months, also hinders trade processes. Altogether, these factors kept the ferry link to just 15 million tons per year, throttling the growth of the middle corridor. But the bottlenecks don't stop at sea. On land, wagons idle for days before loading. Ferry clearance can take 2 to 5 days, and some ports like Alat have only 2 to 3 mobile cranes, while Kurik lacks high-capacity container cranes altogether. When demand spikes, what should a 15-day journey can stretch to 40 days, nullifying the ocean route advantage.
We believe that streamlining trade can bring immense growth potential. Firstly, both Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan are attempting to diversify their trade beyond oil and gas, with Azerbaijan achieving significant success as shown by non-oil exports jumping 74% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2025. This reduces the dependence of trade performance on oil and gas, decreasing the risk of the tunnel project. Secondly, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have established friendly ties beyond a long history of diplomacy, as illustrated by their economic cooperation. This facilitates successful negotiations that achieve efficient and effective results. Furthermore, current conflicts of the Russia-Ukraine war have heightened the need for alternate efficient routes to safeguard trade. This provides faster transport options for Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan to meet demand in areas such as exporting of energy to Europe. Lastly, such innovative approaches could be the key to revitalizing foreign direct investment flow into both countries by boosting investor confidence and reducing supply chain uncertainty. These problems and potential point towards a multi-modal tunnel from Alat to Kurik. Compared to Aktau, the route from Kurik to Alat is significantly shorter. Combined with its deeper fairway and newer infrastructure, choosing Kurik's port is more cost-efficient. Furthermore, the tunnel infrastructure offers protection against weather events and is compatible with ferry operation, and an electrically powered system can bring environmental benefits. Presenting the Caspian Connector, a multi-modal tunnel spanning 368 kilometers with a depth of 75 meters. This tunnel surpasses the world's longest existing undersea tunnel, which is 54 kilometers long. It has 3 key components. Firstly, a high-speed rail for cargo transport, 15 times faster than a ferry that slashes ferry bottlenecks by 60%. Secondly, a design that is resistant to weather events and waves. Thirdly, a road transport system that promotes tourism and cross-country connectivity.
This project will span 25 years, ending in Q4 2050. Feasibility studies begin in Q4 2025, followed by environmental clearances and financing. Major construction begins in Q3 2039, and tunnel boring machine, or TBM, excavation will kick off in Q3 2041, supported by 14 TBMs progressing at 5 kilometers per year each. By Q4 2047, slab tracks, MEP systems, and controls will be installed, bringing the Caspian connector to life.
From a legal standpoint, the path to construction is rather straightforward. The International Court of Justice put to solve two cases, namely Greenland and Maya in 1988 and the Black Sea case in 2004. From there, a three-step framework can be derived, with bilateral agreements between Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan in 2001 and 2003, working to provide an equidistant median line for the project to potentially take place. On top of that, the 2018 Convention on the Legal Status of the Caspian Sea gives each coastal state full control over the seabed in its own sector under Article 8, and it also allows two neighbors to authorize any cross-sector installation or structure under Article 14. A rail and road tunnel therefore needs nothing more than a bilateral agreement and a joint environmental impact assessment. The latter is obligatory in any case under the Tehran Convention's 2018 EIA protocol and the ICJ's guidance in Pulp Mills of 2010. Now on to the case studies. First, we look at China's Bohai Strait Tunnel, 120 km long, approved in principle since 2014, but falls victim to the same issues as our proposal in high opportunity costs, environmental sensitivity, and seismic risk. Alternatively, the 16 km Xintang Tunnel, opened in 2022, shows greater promise, but this case study is caveated with the fact that Alat and Kurik both do not possess the external economies of scale that Hong Kong has. Despite this, we find the growth rate financially sound, but we are still wary as this tunnel is a mere fraction of the size of our proposal.
So, how should the Caspian connector be financed? We propose a public-private partnership, specifically a design, build, finance, operate, maintain contract within a special purpose vehicle. This structure balances public control and private efficiency. The government retains ownership, which is essential because of the project's strategic importance to both Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. Also, private involvement drives cost discipline and reduces upfront public spending. The PPP also ensures optimal risk allocation. Construction risks shift to experienced private contractors with the technical know-how and financial incentives to deliver on time and on budget, and availability payments mitigate revenue risk for private investors. Also, the SPV structure offers clear and accountable financing. With so many different investors, it ensures financial clarity by consolidating revenues, availability fees, and loan repayments into a single account. It also streamlines joint decisions between Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan on issues like routing and border security, hence decreasing bureaucratic inefficiency. Further, it promotes sustainability by enforcing the project's environmental impact assessment obligations. Next, regarding capital structure, we propose a 60-40 debt-to-equity split, giving a 1.5 ratio, which is considered healthy for infrastructure projects. The governments only have to contribute 10% of upfront capital, hence reducing fiscal strain. Next, this structure also uses concessional loans to greatly reduce overall WACC, which is important given the high cost of equity typical in developing countries. However, the debt is not too high as to trigger higher lending risk premiums. Further, the 10% government funding signals strong political commitment that can crowd in private equity, hence without burdening public budgets but still accomplishing the goal. Next are our cost estimates. Since this project will be Earth's longest tunnel by far, CapEx is high at $129.6 billion US, and we further expect annual OpEx of $305.5 million USD. For revenues, we included fees for transport, port clearance, vehicle tolls, and rail access. We used aggressive baseline assumptions of 30 megatons in annual cargo volume, roughly 2.5 times larger than the 2030 forecast. But even with these aggressive estimates, annual revenue falls well short of PPP availability payments, hence showcasing the project's financial infeasibility.
To further assess the project viability, we next did a Monte Carlo simulation of 10,000 scenarios, and even under best case assumptions on the green curve, the project stayed deep in the red. Average cumulative NPV slid to a negative 58 billion USD by year 35 and never once crossed zero. Even the bull variant, which assumes an 8% annual freight growth for the first 15 years, finishes year 35 around negative US $46 billion. For the two governments, after factoring a US $13 billion equity injection, their own cash flow NPV still lands between negative US $78 billion and negative US $87 billion. In short, every path the model can find does not create value. On the risk matrix, the major deal breakers sit together in the upper right, where we see a demand gap and a likely 15% cost overrun on a US $130 billion budget that will compromise the project financials viability. One square lower, still on the high probability side, is the funding shortfall with wary multilaterals and banks. Down in the lower left sits the environmental and safety risk. A TBM strike could stall the drive and trigger liability, yet its odds are modest. Until traffic and capex move out of the red zone, financing and safety remain secondary worries.
Moving on, we need to consider the environmental effect of undertaking such a massive project. Building such a large project in a landlocked body of water such as the Caspian Sea can have devastating effects if not handled correctly. Construction works tend to be incredibly polluted. Sediments are disturbed, which decrease water quality and damage local ecosystems for as long as 26 years. Furthermore, it will increase the quantity of heavy metals in water, exceeding permissible limits in most samples. As such, we hold off the project until environmental issues are addressed and the feed volume passes 78 megatons per year. This makes the project significantly more viable for various stakeholders with a BCR of 1.1% and a payback duration of less than 30 years. In the short run, however, we need to explore alternative solutions such as an offshore port, which is cost-effective and can be implemented within 2 years, taking advantage of demand spikes and relieving bottlenecks. Ferries and cargo vessels don't need to wait for onshore docking slots. They can offload at sea, improving turnaround time and fleet efficiency. A similar example that's currently in play is the floating port of Porto Veneziano Consult, which is designed as an offshore logistics platform and currently helps with petrochemical trade. Based on similar floating ports worldwide, this solution proves to be far more profitable with a lower capital expense and operating costs, and brings in an NPV of $262 million USD in 10 years, proving itself to be an asset to the countries. In conclusion, while building a multimodal bridge or tunnel between Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, it will only be feasible in the long run, and in the interim, the country should explore alternative solutions such as floating ports. Thank you.
Thank you, students. Now you have 10 minutes for question and answer. Are you ready?
We are ready.
Okay. Are you ready? Yes.
Team Singapore, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is about the assessment about the initial idea. Towards the beginning of the presentation, you've shown an implementation plan around 25 years. So just wanted to clarify, when you take into account the feasibility, when does the first idea get operational? And like, what's the key drivers of this timeline of 25 years of end time for the project?
So this timeline is assuming that we do start the project now, and we will have a planning phase from now, Q4 2025, all the way until Q1 2037. And financing and the design procurement will happen concurrently and simultaneously. And after 2037, we'll begin the development and construction stages. And for development and construction stages, we rely mainly on TBM, which is, and we will use 14 of them, as well as other machinery and also offshore shaft islands to shorten the TBM drives. And we believe that this timeline is highly feasible given the other alternatives and other case studies that we had shown, like the Bohai's plan. And given this, we were able to calculate our finances and the amount that we will be spending each year. However, because of the other factors that we have mentioned, like the high risk of environmental impacts, as well as the risk of lack of demand, and also the lack of finance, we believe that we will push this timeline off and push this project off to a later date where we have enough demand of 78 million tons per year.
So another two of our key drivers is pertain the sea level change and the geohazard management. So this timeline is created in mind with, every year the shoreline is dropping about roughly 4 km on the Kazakh shelf, and our timeline design allows up to a fall of 10 meters without extending our approach causeways, because beyond that, extra viaducts will get triggered. Moreover, the deepest clay sections along the Azerbaijan and Kazakh shelf carry gas pockets, and adopting our TBM method, as we have explained, with nitrogen envelope and pre-drainage is also part of our baseline costs. So if there are any unforeseen kicks that exceed the model, contingency will be consumed very fast. So these are some drivers that we are considering in our schedule as well.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is about technological infrastructure You don't mention in risks. Don't you think that some problems will occur when you will establish cargo terrain?
Sorry, could you repeat your question? So sorry, we couldn't catch the question just now. Is it possible to repeat the question? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. You don't mention in your risks technological risks, special technological infrastructure risks.
Sorry, to summarize your question, is it a question of why we did not include the technological risks?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. So, because I feel like because as stated previously, there has been other projects that have sound infrastructure as well as sound financing, like the one that we have included previously, which do include very mature as well as sophisticated technical development infrastructure. So we believe that we can use similar infrastructure and similar technical devices to build our bridge. And we believe that technical difficulties and risks would be secondary compared to the larger risks that we have, like financial risks and the long-term risks like the geographical and tectonic risks. Yeah.
Right, so just if I can add on a bit. So for the in-depth engineering issues, we didn't consider them too explicitly because they were labeled as outside the scope of the case. That being said, we do feel that these risks should be accounted for in relevant feasibility studies and planning stages under the pre-preparation stage before construction, right? And we've tried to incorporate those concerns into our financial modeling, which is why our capex is so high. We try to take this from past case studies, such as in the Seikan Tunnel in Japan, which is currently the world's longest tunnel. And that had a cost of about 300 million USD per kilometer. There's also the Bohai Tunnel. It's also about somewhere around $350 million per kilometer. So our project has also a similar value of roughly $350 million per kilometer. So given this, we've tried to account for these technical concerns inside our financial planning.
Thank you.
Team Singapore, thank you very much for the presentation. Whilst we're on this page, I would love to understand your mitigation plans against these risks. And also I would love to understand your thoughts about what are the key success factors to enable successful implementation of the alternative scenario you're recommending.
Yeah, so I covered the slide, so let me just talk about this. Mainly the environmental risks will be handled via the legality portion of our model, because we're trying to build, if we're trying to build a tunnel, we're going to build a tunnel that's legally sound, and under the legal obligations that is tied to a project or a mega project of this size, naturally there'll be environmental investigations being carried out, so that the TBMs potentially will not harm marine ecosystems as much as possible. So that will be dealt with. And as well as partnerships, we are looking towards alternative sources of financing. So as you can see in the pie chart a few slides ago, we have tried to diversify the flow of cash into our project as much as possible, given that if one fails, we can still rely on a few others to continue financing this project. So for example, like the government equity, both Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan can provide, the Azerbaijani and Kazakhstani government can provide its own equity to contribute to this project, and also other PPPs and the SPV model that we have discussed as well.
And also to answer the question about our alternative strategy, which is the floating port, To assess how it's successful, one of the key ways we can assess it is through the turnover rate, which is about whether the amount of trade that happened as a ratio to its inventory by itself. So they can help us how much trade that the ports are really able to conduct, and we can compare it to the ports that we actually have now to see that if it's actually as effective, then even more effective or less effective. And we can try to also figure out why it's more effective, why it's less effective, because this can also help to upgrade the ports in the future. Even though we call this floating port a short-run strategy, this short-run strategy is actually very important to providing vital data for us to use in the future to also adapt our long-run strategy, because at the end, we still do have to improve our ports, our infrastructure, to make sure that they can handle the more trade that the tunnel can bring in the future. And also another way we can see how this floating port is successful is how congested it is, because right now, the main problem the port's trying to fix is that a lot of the ferries right now, they are stuck at a place. They cannot offload their cargo because there is not enough space over there. So we can see that if congestion has really been reduced using these ports and how much it has been, where there's a optimal position to put it at to reduce the congestion. And these are the main two factors that we think we can determine the success by.
To add on, we also considered current case studies that are doing similar things around the world. So one particular example would be Singapore itself. So our port itself tends to be very busy with excess demands at times. So during times of port expansion, the country itself actually uses these floating ports as an interim measure to offset excess demand. So we think that something similar can be done in the case of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. And when we read up further, we also learned that extremely busy ports such as the Mexican port is also implementing similar strategies. Yeah.
Okay, that's the student. Thank you, Singapore team.
Thank you.
Thank you, judges.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have a 30-minute break. Take time, refresh your mind and energy. Please to be here on time. Bye-bye.
So we don't leave the meeting.
Yes, please. continue our next finalist team, Malaysia.
Salam semua. Oh my god, I'm still scrolling TikTok. I'm next to Atina. Yes.
Imagine standing on the shores of the Caspian Sea, looking out at a horizon that once divided nations, cultures, and economies. Now, imagine a bold line of steel turning once was a barrier into a gateway, unlocking a whole new era of Eurasian trade. Team Malaysia would like to present more than just a bridge, but an opportunity for unity. Next slide. Our team would advocate for the go-ahead with the Caspian Connector project, presenting solutions that would best suit the needs of all stakeholders. We have found current issues with organizational structures, costs, and environmental issues to address when solving our problem. With that, we would propose a two-pronged strategy of not just building the bridge with cutting-edge technologies, but also investing money in short-term efficiency improvements to current trading whilst the project is undergoing. Furthermore, we have identified key risks with tech, geopolitics, and the environment that we have solved with mitigating solutions. Next slide, please. Currently, the Caspian trade ecosystem faces issues with management and weather. Inefficiency and delays have created major logistical bottlenecks that can affect scheduling. Secondly, weather vulnerability causes unpredictability in marine shipping schedules. 3, capacity has clogged the ever-increasing trade between Eurasian goods, especially in between China and Europe. Lastly, environmental risks have posed a detrimental effect to biodiversities and the sea levels in the Caspian Sea. All of these issues have detrimental impacts on trade and the future of the Caspian. Microeconomically, the cost of transportation, next slide please, may reach up to 3,000 euros to transport just 1 ton, a 20% increase relative to others in the region. Coupled with the long travel times of 13.5 hours, the current system is incredibly unattractive to trading partners and investors. With capacity under use, much trade, 598% in fact, flock to neighboring countries over lower costs and faster times, leaving the Azerbaijani port in the dark.
Thank you, Jen. A simple solution would be to propose a ferry upgrade. A bolder but ultimately flawed solution would also be to attempt a full conventional bridge at once, a simply financially unviable undertaking. Hence, our team concluded that neither approach is sufficient, and instead, we developed a comprehensive long-term solution that is both visionary in nature and disciplined in cost. It is a cargo and passenger rail bridge connection built on 3 core principles: innovative hybrid technology usage, a phased implementation that validates the market, and a robust governance structure. Our plan connects Alat in Azerbaijan to Kurup in Kazakhstan. But to solve the unprecedented engineering challenges of the Caspian Sea, as you all know, with turbulent waters and depths almost a kilometer deeper than any other bridge, we are not going to use just a single type of bridge. Instead, we have designed a hybrid engineering solution that uses the right technology for the right environment. In the shallower coastal areas, we intend to use proven cost-effective concrete viaducts and cables, like a typical bridge. And to handle deep water and severe weather, we intend to construct submerged floating tunnels, a technology that has already been proven on a smaller scale in projects like the Hong Kong-Macau link and in Norway. This also allows ships traveling from the north to easily pass south. At the heart of the corridor, we also intend to build a central floating artificial island, creating a vital logistics and maintenance hub needed for the rail. Crucially, our implementation is broken into 2 strategic stages to manage risk. In stage 1, we will build the connection to the central island, creating an immediate functional link to test the market and generate early cash flow. Once the demand is proven, only then we will secure the final public-private partnerships to complete the connection. This phased hybrid approach improves our investment offering. Next slide, please. A bold plan requires a robust implementation framework, hence our model is built on two pillars, a unified strategic owner and a de-risked execution model. First, we propose the TCCA, a 50-50 joint venture company between the sovereign wealth funds of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, requiring only a 250 million euro stake from both, which then allows for which provides sovereign wealth that then allows for 1.5 billion euros to be gained from development banks like the World Bank. Second, to execute the massive construction, the TCCA will utilize the DBFOM model, which is far and away the gold standard in any public-private partnership. As proven by the Eurotunnel, this will completely remove any need for a large sum of initial financing, de-risk the immense risk of construction delays and cost overruns to the private sector, and ensures we attract the world's best engineering firms, giving all major powers a stake in the project's success. Finally, the Central Island provides immense growth potential as a logistics hub in the special economic zone, which will help to generate revenue for the project's long-term profitability.
Thank you. In the short run with our new Caspian connector, trade routes through the Middle Corridor will experience reduced traveling time significantly by over 9 hours as we create a direct link from Port Alat to Port Kurik. To benchmark with other available routes, you can see that we've improved the route to decrease our cost of transport as well. And over time, we will expect this decrease in cost of transport and time to further decrease as we integrate AI logistics management system as well as provide retraining schemes for the people of Azerbaijan. Now, through the Caspian Sea itself, the time taken to transport goods has decreased by 67%, while there will be enhanced capacity to accommodate a larger volume of trade through Europe to Asia. With this new inflow of trade, we anticipate bustling economies through the port of Alat and port of Kurik. As the current Azerbaijani economy has approximately 49% of their citizens working in the gig economy, we believe that we will create formal employment opportunities which provide stable income as well as increase aggregate demand to help make a prosperous economy for years to come. Next slide, please. Of course, taking on any mega projects would mean that there will be significant risks as well. So, seeing how we are constructing a fixed structure in the critical part of global trade, we may be facing retaliation from other competing partners. As such, we will be adhering to the 2018 Convention on the Legal Status of the Caspian Sea and build the bridge just strictly in our territory. So strategic components of our bridge will also help us to avoid direct collision with any existing trade routes, and legally we'll also have to comply with the Tehran Convention, which my teammate will elaborate on furthermore.
Thank you, Tina. Now, another risk is the extinction of the marine ecosystem. In the Caspian Sea, seal population has been decreasing exponentially since 1950. Therefore, noise pollution from the construction may drive more seals away, increasing the risk of their extinction. To mitigate this risk, we will be using inflatable pile sleeves, which reduces underwater noise by about 20 decibels. Finally, construction disrupts the seabed while producing a mass of suspended sediments and lead to habitat disruption. This can be prevented by the use of slit curtains to block solids from spreading. Furthermore, the use of sustainable construction materials such as recycled steel uses 75% less energy than manufacturing from raw iron ore. Not only that, steel slag can also produce artificial coral reefs, and a case study that we can use is Japan. JFE Steel Corporation used steel slag to make an artificial reef in Yokohama Port, where species richness increased in just 4 to 38 species in the span of 5 years. Next slide, please. Now, the short-term policies to address the present while the bridge is under construction is firstly AI integration. For instance, port management and information system at Port of Alat installed at 2019 is before AI was popular. So we would like to bring it up to date with the post-AI world such as Port of Los Angeles and Port of Rotterdam, who has already implemented these technologies. For example, at Port Tanjung, Indonesia, AI reduced tugboat travel distances by 20% and saved $155,000 in fuel costs annually. AI has also reduced the average waiting time for visiting ships by about 2 hours, further reducing emissions. Now, another policy is dynamic tolls using price discrimination, where prices are adjusted to reflect market conditions and maximize profits. This would bring higher rates during times of high demand, such as harvest seasons and pre-holiday surges, and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you, Zati. Now, with any idea, there are bound to be risks that we must mitigate. We have created a risk matrix to illustrate the severity and probability of each risk, with AI system of functions at the top left and staff and employment in the bottom right. AI systems may not function. Staff may be unfamiliar with the new technology. Our customers may not like the changes, and our premium services may not maintain their quality. All of these risks we can handle. We'll perform a pilot and phased rollout of the AI systems, provide staff training, maintain transparent pricing details, and carry out regular performance reviews to mitigate these problems. Next slide. To conclude, we plan to construct an innovative bridge spanning the Caspian Sea to connect Baku and Kurik. We will use a joint venture and public-private partnership framework to fund our 480-kilometer-long bridge. Additionally, we will leverage international private sector engineering expertise to turn this idea into a reality, while also garnering support from the international community. We believe that this bridge will create strong networks for global success by developing more environmentally friendly trading routes, reducing reliance on other routes, and maximizing efficiency for global trade. Overall, a net positive for all parties involved. So, join Team Malaysia as we construct a path to prosperity.
Thank you very much. Additionally, here are our appendices. This is the technical information with the bridge, and moreover, these are our cost and revenue functions. And yes, thank you. Yes, we are ready.
Team Singapore, thank you very much for the presentation. Maybe if you can elaborate further on the appendices for us to better understand feasibility indicators and your assumptions.
All right, so I will proceed with that. Thank you for your question. Here's Appendix A. This is the specifics of the route that we are planning to take using Dijkstra's algorithm to minimize the time spent in deeper waters. You can see that the white line is normal bridges, so normal concrete bridges, and then the red portion is using an underground tunnel. The yellow portion is using floating pontoon portions, and the same vice versa for Kurik. You can see that we have a pilot phase and a complete phase. Pilot phase will be conducted as shown here. You can see in the phases we have 3 years meant for analysis of just soil, cost functions, yes. 3 years for analysis of soil, environmental, and seismic testing. And afterwards we will continue with our phase 1 construction, building the bridges connection from Alat all the way to the artificial island, and that will last until about 16 years. And after 16 years, we will have a 1-year trial period in which we will assess demand, where from Alat to the artificial island, and from the artificial island to Kurik, we will use a ferry system. So bridge, then ferry, to just assess demand first and foremost. And then afterwards, if demand does prove to be effective, we will continue with phase 2, which will last until 28 years. And then it will continue on with operation all the way until 50 years we have modeled. The current break-even is 39 years after the initial analysis phase. And also, we have accounted for the discount rate to be 2.85%, 2% from IMF predicted inflation of the euro, because we are using the euro for our calculations, and 0.85% for World Bank population change. Thank you.
And yeah, MPV and IRR and payback periods are indicators?
The payback period will be 38 years, as seen there. The negative change to a positive, if you are able to see. I don't believe that pixels are visible, but yes.
Okay, and the discount rate, you said you've used
2.85%, yes.
Don't you think it's very low by considering the length of this project and CapEx heavy investments on this sort of infrastructure investment?
Because of CapEx heavy investments, we have accounted for that particular calculation when we are working on our revenue function, when we have adjusted for your foreign investment funding and your joint venture funding. With that, we have accounted for the WACC model and the CAPM model as well.
And what is it, just to clarify, I saw the number 1.3 billion. Was that billion? 1.3 billion total CapEx requirement?
1.3 billion.
On the JV slide, you had 1.27 something.
The NPV adjusted final profit at the end of the 50 years is 247 billion. This is in 847 million in here.
Sorry, can you go to one of the early slides where you had creating a joint venture with Sofas and some Kazakh companies on previous slides?
Okay,
Before we...
The start of the presentation. Yeah, here you had 1.3 billion, right?
3.4.
Okay.
Oh, you mean the seed funding, 1.3 billion?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So for our financing structure, the way it's going to work is we're going to follow a public-private partnership model, which means that the majority of the bridge will be, first of all, broken down into segments, and it's going to be financed, built, operated, and maintained by the private sector, which is by far the most efficient use for it. And then only afterwards, we are going to pay them annual payments afterwards. So the initial funding that we need, and why our equity stake is actually very, very low from the Kazakh-Azerbaijan side, is because we just need the initial preliminary funding from the sovereign wealth in order to get funding from the World Bank and other developmental banks so that we can begin the initial preliminary phases of the project first. So after all of that has been implemented, we simply only need to pay the availability payments needed for the public-private partnerships, which can be easily raised through longer government bonds, given that this is a very popular cultural project.
Thank you very much. And instead of bridge solution, you're now proposing bridge plus tunnel plus islands. All of them would probably increase the cost. Don't you think that this is really costly solution? And are you sure that your cost modeling captures all possible capex?
We have decided, in contrast to just using a complete bridge or a complete tunnel or just complete floating pontoons, we have decided to use these 5 technologies because it has been a tried and tested method in the past when working with smaller scales. I think mainly because the Caspian Sea is such a long distance, it might be unviable to just purely consider the engineering perspectives behind the full bridges and then the full tunnels. And another thing that we wanted to incorporate in our calculations as well was that we've used past models, especially those around the Caspian Sea and the region in general when we are calculating our cost distances. And second of all, by using a segmented design, we are able to speed up the time period of development. And yes, the main model that we have chosen to reference is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai Macau Bridge, because it does use 2 segments, one a floating island, one a normal bridge, and then underground tunnels as well. Thank you.
So if I could further add on, the cost, we actually covered like all the possible different solutions, and we decided that any conventional bridge would simply be far too expensive given the Caspian Sea is already has waters that are very, very deep as compared to any other bridge in the world. So the second largest bridge in the world only has a depth of about 150 meters, or around 50 meters, whereas the Caspian Sea can go up to depths almost over 1 kilometer long. And given that it also has very turbulent waters, any conventional bridge in the deeper areas would simply not be financially feasible. Hence, we decided that the only financially viable solution that we calculated must involve the submerged floating tunnels as well as the floating island. Not to mention that these also provide long-term economic benefits in the long run, with the artificial island having the potential to become a special economic zone in the future.
Just one last question. By the way, thank you for this great presentation. My question is regarding to your economic model. Have you been able to identify the sensitive factors of your economic model? What are the key potential risks that may kind of impact your NPV?
Okay, I think the key risks and mitigations that we've already mentioned in our risk and mitigations side, in terms of all of the implementations that are more short-term, like the AI system and the staff being trained, we have included that in our economic model under the cost of operation of the particular stations, which we have calculated based on numerous case studies from around the Caspian area and around the world as well, using our model. But I think the main thing that we've considered is the risk when it comes to building such a long bridge, which I'm sure many of you are concerned about. That is why we have chosen our implementation to go in 2 phases. If let's say the first phase were not to work out and we will only have a bridge from Alat all the way to the artificial island, it will still reduce travel times by about 5 hours, which is, still a significant reduction compared to the current operation of the Alat port, which I believe there are only 6 shuttles from Alat to Kuruk in a certain day. So I think that would multiply the amount of goods flowing through that particular sector by 2.8% that I've calculated.
Okay, so as I understand, what you say is that you kind of incorporated all these risks in your economic model.
Yes.
Have you been, were you able to kind of quantify the reputation risk, for example? How did you manage it?
To be able to quantify the reputation risk, I believe one major thing that we did account for is that, as previous teams mentioned, the northern and the southern corridors are vastly politically disadvantaged. And I think my team member will explain more about this later, but we also have considered partnerships with other people in the area, such as Russia and Turkmenistan, which already have their own existing trade routes. I'll let her explain.
So we understand that currently Russia and Turkmenistan, there is a trade route ongoing. However, as according to the 2018 Convention on the Legal Status of the Caspian Sea, it will be against the convention if we were to face any sort of disruptions for our project, because we are strictly operating under our own territories, and that's why for the trade route between Russia and Turkmenistan, they also will be going through some parts of our bridge. However, we have accounted for that, and we will be using the submerged tunnels, so the ships can just easily cross through without even knowing the tunnels are there in the first place. It will not be seen on the surface of the sea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Team Malaysia. Now we next finalist team Bulgaria. Join us online.
Hello. I'm sorry, we have a technical problem. We can't change the slide further.
It goes blank after we try to change it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
If you want, I can change for you. When you want, you say next, I can change. Do you want?
Could we try again? We would like to change our slides ourselves.
Okay.
But we want to try one more time.
Okay, I think it's working now.
Okay, you can start.
Good evening. We are Team Bulgaria and we'd like to present our proposal for the Caspian connector. Freight demand across the Trans-Caspian is rising fast, but systems remain unreliable. We propose a fixed link from Kyiv to Baku, a strategic connection to unlock capacity and stabilize Eurasian trade. The Trans-Caspian corridor is moving fast. Freight volumes nearly doubled between 2022 and 2023, and in 2024, container traffic has already passed 50,000 20-foot equivalent units. Transit times are solid, 15 to 20 days, and even with delays, it's still much faster than going through the Suez. But the system isn't keeping up. Ferry delays, idle ports, and mismatched customs are slowing everything down. With a 2025 target of 5.2 million tons, the current setup just won't scale. For Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, the goal is clear: reduce dependence on Russian and Iranian routes and put idle infrastructure to work. Baku's port alone can handle 50 million tons, yet much of that capacity is still sitting unused. What is needed is reliable, weatherproof connectivity and smoother coordination across borders. Exporters are moving grain, oil and metals, but face unpredictable delays, often over 24 hours, inefficient transfers and custom mismatches. In short, the corridor has potential, but lacks consistency. Stakeholders need fast, harmonized, low-friction transport.
Now on the corridor comparison. First off, we have the Northern Corridor, which is the fastest, but on the negative side, it is prone to geopolitical risk and subject to delays and constraints due to that. Next up, we have the Suez Canal, which is the cheapest but the slowest due to the mode of transport, which also has low political stability due to the regions it passes through. The current situation of the Middle is subject to delays due to the unreliable ferry system of the Caspian Sea, as well as infrastructure surcharges due to the multimodal transport chains. With our proposed model, the expected middle corridor would have lower transit times and costs, which would make it more competitive with the Northern Corridor. Additionally, it is not politically vulnerable, which makes it a better option for higher value and time-sensitive freight overall.
Before settling on a solution, we evaluated all major options. Ferries are the current status quo. They're cheap upfront, but have major downsides: limited capacity, delays in bad weather, and fragmented logistics. Logistics that drive up costs to over $4,000 per container. A combined road plus rail bridge provides multimodal access, but comes with significant trade-offs. Capital cost of up to $140 billion, long construction timelines of 20 to 30 years, and higher emissions from mixed traffic. And a third option is a rail-only bridge, sometimes called a rolling highway. It offers a stronger cost-performance balance, lower capital expenditure, reduced emissions, and faster construction. It also supports full electrification and automation-ready terminals. And we continue with our solution.
Given the marine topography, we propose a passageway with an optimal length of 325 kilometers across the Caspian Sea, linking Kyiv, a modern cargo hub connected with high-capacity road infrastructure in Kazakhstan, with Sumkayat, just north of Baku, with access to high-speed national transport and utility infrastructure. The passageway combines retainer wall causeway in shallow waters and bridge spans over deeper sections, carrying two heavy-duty electrified rail tracks designed to move the entire middle corridor's freight volume efficiently at speed. Moreover, vehicles can be transported on innovative rolling highway railcars, eliminating the need for unecological ferry boats. Additionally, a 56-inch gas pipeline, 400 kilovolt power lines, and fiber optic cables can be integrated into the prefabricated bridge elements, turning it into a strategic multimodal trade corridor.
Now let us consider the impact on global and regional trade. First off, it would improve the China-Europe connectivity. Creating a better alternative to the current ferry transportation system would significantly reduce the strain on port infrastructure, improve logistics by eliminating the need for multimodal transit chains, and furthermore, it would lower transit times and reduce the cost of transportation. Creating a sustainable alternative to the northern routes and Suez Canal would contribute to China's BRI, which envisages a connected route to Europe. It would establish the central role of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan in international trade, and it would mitigate the political risk existing in other transport corridors. Looking at the market and industry benefits, the project will attract new cargo flows and it would lead to an increase in GDP. It would lead to a right shift of labor demand and an increase in employment rate, as well as a right shift in aggregate demand and long-term supply due to improved infrastructure and increased trade.
The project aligns with the 2018 Caspian Sea Legal Convention, which allows Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan to approve infrastructure projects without external veto power, as long as environmental clauses are fulfilled, of course. From an environmental standpoint, the design minimizes seabed disruption by using a causeway with water flow openings in shallow waters, while deep water sections use hybrid bridge spans or suspended structures to maintain water flow. We will conduct a joint environmental impact session with Kazakhstan following the Tehran Convention and implementing environmental monitoring systems along the route. Another benefit is that rail transportation will save more than 160,000 tons of CO2 per year.
Moving to the financial approximations, after all, who doesn't like math? We'll take Hong Kong-Macau Bridge as our inspiration. Its price in 2018 was 5 billion, which accounted for inflation in today's money is 9.6 billion. This would amount to a price per kilometer of 266 million. Discounting because our Caspian connector is only railway and not road, which is 30% cheaper. Thus, by multiplying the length by the coefficient and by the price, we get our capital expenditure for the rail system at about 60 billion. Furthermore, the additional revenue streams would cost in capital expenditures 2.19 billion, and in total, that's 62.8. Our annual operation and maintenance will be only 1%, which is our main yearly expense, and will amount to 628 million, roughly. Next. We base our revenue approximation mostly on the quantities. As we can see, there is a strong growth pattern in the total freight that moves through this middle canal. And with our projection, we have approximated that the growth will continue up to 2040 when it will reach its maximum and it will stay relatively the same. Accounting for this, we have calculated our base annual revenue in today's money, of course, being 1.6 billion, and our best case revenue in today's money being 2.16 billion. When we add revenues from other revenue streams such as the pipeline, electric transmission line, and the fiber optic line, we get to a total annual base revenue between 2.39 the best case and 3.09 billion in the best case. Next. This is our profitability model if we spend the total capital expenditure up front. But actually, this is really economically unfeasible because it would cause depletion of the resources of the countries and the reserves. As we can see, the best case break-even is in year 44, whereas the base case break-even is in year 55. With that said, I would like to provide a better alternative for financing it. Our main idea is to finance it through both equity and liabilities by issuing a bond. 50 billion will be the equity, which will be 40% for each country, respectively, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan through their national sovereign funds. And the other 20% of equity will be for a private investor, which is most likely the China Railway Limited. Additionally, the other 13 billion will come from the bond emission, which will be at 6% interest rate and will have a 15-year maturity, but we will issue it in year 14. Why? Well, let's see in the balance sheet. Looking at our balance sheet, we see that initially the total assets are equal to the total equity. However, our idea is in year 14 to issue this bond so we can have only 5 years of negative profit, essentially before our cash flows starts. Our cash flow starts after the last year of the projects, which is year 19, and essentially we will suffer the capitalization of 780 million each year for these 5 years, and after that, when the cash flow starts, the equity will build up once again. Let's see there's the model. As you can see, the best case break-even shifted, as did the base case, but that's normal because we have the coupon payments, which are further expenditures. But after 6 years, it will be sure that it will be certainly profitable. With that said, we would like to move to our recommendation, which is?
Lastly, we would like to suggest a few recommendations for short-term and long-term. Firstly, in short-term, we would like to suggest to launch a feasibility and environmental studies program, to finalize financing agreements, and establish a binational task force between the countries of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. In the long-term, we suggest building the Caspian connector as proposed, securing financing commitments, and coordinating regionally. These are our sources, and we thank you for your attention. We expect your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Now, question and answer time.
Thank you, guys, for the great presentation. My question is related, you just stated an interesting point that proposing different line which is from Aktau to Sumgait, a little bit northern industrial city of Azerbaijan. I would like to know, in your economic feasibility study, you just at the same slide you just mentioned that there is also a need for logistics hub to be built for this route to be operational. So have you included the cost of the building logistics hub in your capex estimation?
Well, actually, the thing is that it's really near Baku, and Baku, and Baku actually has potential. It has unutilized warehouses, and actually this distance is covered by the current infrastructure. The total freight could be covered by the infrastructure that already exists, and further on, Baku could actually take this whole volume and this whole quantity, and the logistics line could continue through Baku.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is related to the operational structure of your proposal. How's it going to be?
Excuse me, what do you mean by operational structure? Could you elaborate?
You talked about the financing structure, which is like 40% for Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan.
Yes, of course.
And
yeah, well, answer. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No worries. As I understand, this will be a joint venture agreement, right?
Well, yes, both sides, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan through the SOFAS and Kazakhstan through the National Sovereign Fund, will participate with equity, as they will invest each 20 billion, amounting to 40% of equity.
So my question related to the structure. I'm curious, why do you consider like strategic private investors as a potential shareholder for this project?
Of course. Well, generally in mega projects such as ours, where most of the funding would typically come from the country, as they offer less revenue and profits than investors would typically like, and more indirect benefits such as geopolitical ones and so on. But it's good to have some equity for the private firms that will be actually the operators and the executors of the project, such as the China Railway Group, because that way they have skin in the game and they're accountable for the execution. And we generally think that they would have interest because, as we know, this company is actually influenced by government decisions in China, and China has a particular interest in participating in such a project because of the trade between China and Europe, and having China as a beneficiary from this economic activity.
Okay, thank you. It's clear.
Team Bulgaria, thank you very much for the presentation. I've seen you've reflected risks and mitigation plans. How about their quantification? How would them affect your financial calculations? Have you considered them?
Yes, well, first of all, of course, the inflation risk is totally calculated because everything is in today's prices, whereas the other risks are more not so quantitative in our case and more generally geopolitical because both countries, not both countries, but all countries generally can have many indirect benefits that generally balance out the risks that are exposed in this matrix. And that's why, because this is a more geopolitical project, it couldn't be calculated so quantitatively with the risk factors because they're very particular for this case.
Thank you. What about the change in demand, implementation risks, financing risks, other implementation-related factors? How would
Yes.
how sensitive
Well,
your
the
numbers
financing
would be to them?
risks are actually pretty well thought because mostly the governments would fund this project because they would likely experience many indirect benefits as well as the revenue streams eventually when we have a breakout. But for example, Azerbaijan generally has the in the worst case, it still will be financed by equity, so there are not so many financing problems. And on the other side, the bond offers a pretty attractive rate, which is close to the rates of the national bonds, both of Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. So I think from both sides, both from equity and from the bond side, there would be demand for investment, and generally the financial risk is low, and there is, yes.
And one more question regarding the financing of the project. You just mentioned that Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan will finance 40% of the project. And considering that, what was the total capex of the project?
I'm sorry, 40% of the equity, and we also have liabilities that will be financing the project.
Okay, so here, what's the total equity?
Yes, the total capital expenditure will be roughly 63 billion overall, and in the first 14 years it would all come from equity, and in the last 5 years of constructions, because you can see that construction ends in year 18, the first year of exploitation is the first year of cash flow, and thus, the revenue will start coming in, which will offset both operating expenses and the coupon payments, and eventually it will build up to profitability. However, we see that there is, in between year 27 and 28, there is a huge minus. That's because, of course, we have to pay the actual bond that is for 15 years. But later on, we break even between year 50 and year 60, roughly.
Yeah, still from this slide, I'm trying to clarify what's the equity portion of the investment in terms of dollars.
In terms of dollars, yes. Well, in the pie chart, it starts with 20 billion, which is 40% for each country, and then 20% of the equity is strategic private investors such as the China Railway. As we mentioned, due to the bond payments for 5 years, there would be some decapitalization because they have to, the coupon payments would have to be financed by subtracting from equity so that the accounting equation is right. But after that, when cash flow starts, generally, they will start building up equity, and the proportions would most likely stay the same if one party doesn't sell out. In our case, it's the private investors.
Okay. So my question is, do you believe that Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan governments can finance this 20 billion amount? Have you done any
yes, we looked at the reserves, and according to my memory, Kazakhstan has about 110 billion, and Azerbaijan has, through the Sovereign Wealth Fund, has about 70. if I'm not wrong, or 80, I'm not sure. So we think, yes, it's a big proportion of the reserve, but this project has so many indirect benefits and it's so geopolitically crucial and could attract such good reputation to both countries that I think that the risk is worth taking, especially when having in consideration that we have managed to find the best model that maximizes both revenue and minimizes costs, as we can see in the matrix. So yes, I did the research for the reserves of the countries, and they have these funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
as well.
Bulgarian team, for your clear and impactful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Please welcome our next finalist team, China.
Good evening, dear judges. Imagine a bridge that not only has much lower costs than traditional bridges, but could also significantly boost the transportation efficiency. That's the exact project that our team want to achieve by referencing to the project called Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau project in our country. We're Team China, and today we're standing at a critical juncture of Europe-Asia trade, presenting about our ideas of bridging the biggest lake by evaluating the Caspian Connector project. So due to the rising geopolitical and environmental challenges, the freight volume between corridors has declined sharply, yet the demand for Europe-Asia trade continues to grow. And this has made the middle corridor to become the last option for businesses. With this in mind, we plan to construct a dual-level multimodal bridge for both road and rail traffic, with 100 kilometers causeway in between, and both sides, and also this would require like $120 billion initial investments, which could be collected from governments and multinational banks. And also, according to our research, this solution is highly valuable because it can not only reduce the reliance on land roads, but also increase the transportation efficiency. On this chart, you can see that the growth rate of cargo volume between corridors has declined sharply these few years, and this is mainly because of the disruption of northern and southern corridors. So for northern corridor, which passes through Russia, has become really dangerous these few years because of the conflicts. And you can see that the freight volume has decreased sharply by 50%. And also for southern
is using tunnels, but it's rejected by the extremely high cost and potential safety issues. The 50-kilometer English Channel Tunnel, for instance, costs more than 20 billion US dollars, and the second alternative is to use bridges only. However, the problem associated with this is that using bridges in shallow waters is both cost ineffective and unnecessary. Therefore, both the alternatives has been rejected. Now we can go on to describe our own construction plan. Take a look at this picture first. Our construction exhibits a segmentic structure combining both causeways and bridges, just like the design in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. We built causeways in shallow end regions, bridges in deep water area, and also left approximately 50 kilometers for the navigation channel spans that enable the passing of large vessels and ferries. On the Kazakhstan side, we chose Kuruk as the connections port because it is closer. And considering the developed railroad system in both Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, we developed a double-layer structure and included railway transportation in the second layer, which enhances the capacity of our construction. And moreover, to raise additional revenue, we constructed some economic zones alongside the causeways. This is a special spotlight point of our project because it takes advantage of the large-scale transportation alongside and has the potential of developing into significant regional ports that can provide essential fund for the program.
And now I'll go over a brief overview of the implementation of our project. First, we'll go over these 3 horizons of growth. So the first horizon here will involve a large initial investment in construction and little to no returns for the simple fact that you can't make money off a bridge if the bridge doesn't exist yet. This will happen in horizon 2, where we begin to make small revenue from initial tariffs and tolls that we take from the expected relatively low vehicular flow in the beginning of our bridge project's lifespan. Later on in its lifespan, it will expand into one of, if not the main avenues of transportation for Trans-Caspian rail networking and road networking, and will also serve as a key economic development zone. Now for a specific 20-year implementation plan. For the first 10 years of the project, we plan to mainly focus on financing and securing funds for the remainder of the project via multinational banks and local governments. The second half of the 10-year plan will mainly involve on the construction itself, and we expect a handover date of around 2045. Now, risk 2 and 4 I'll go over later. For now, 1 and 3 mainly involve cost underestimations and possible engineering technicalities. These can be addressed via a separate part of our funds, which we have set apart 10 billion to address these unexpected difficulties in such an unprecedentedly large bridge.
Moving on to the structure of the company, we wish to establish a joint venture binational company which issues golden shares to both the Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan government to ensure veto power by both governments on important decisions, which will ensure geopolitical stability and minimum foreign intervention. These 2 governments will also have special A share that will ensure twice as much voting power as a private investor. The reason why we did not go with public-private partnership is that we will be able to obtain loans with much lower rates from development banks, and we can ensure public priority and regional developments. The construction companies we decided to hire is the CCCC and the Vinci construction company in France to diversify geopolitical risk, and because the 2 companies have previously carried out similar large-scale projects before. In terms of the financial funding, 15% will come from Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan governments, 20% will come from foreign public investment, 40% will come from assorted loans from different development banks, and 10% will come from grants from China, EU, and the 2 founding nations. The reason why we believe that we can receive 10% grant is because of the positive externality generated by this corridor to these 2 countries and China and EU who benefit from the trade, and we wish to get 25% interest rate concessionary loans from the BRI initiative with a pay horizon of 30 years.
So going to the financial projections from the cost side, to estimate the total capital expenditure, we've broken down the cost into 8 different categories with a total sum of $120 billion. And we found that compared to the bridge sections, the causeway sections are way cheaper in the shallow water areas, which helps to reduce our total cost. And in addition, we found out that the per unit cost of our project is still comparably low compared to other similar projects like the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge, because they always have expensive tunnels, which we don't. Moving on to our income statement. So starting from 2045, we forecast 30 million tons of the total freight volume. And according to the bridge attraction effect, which we observed in the similar cases in the Øresund Bridge in Norway, we expect that the northern and southern corridors freight volume will be partially diverted to the bridge, reaching a volume of about 150 million tons in 2050. And combining the revenues from the tariffs and the tolls and the revenues from our causeway economic zone, we're expected to repay the debt with a positive cash flow after the first 3 years and paying back in year 41 after the operation. Next step, please. So what are some further implications of our project? So first of all, in terms of transit times and the cost, transit times is greatly reduced to more than 50%. And in addition, in terms of cost, the cost can be reduced to the current Russian route cost, which is already the lowest cost among all the different corridors. So for the economic cost, although we have a pretty high payback period, which means it have a pretty high capex, we still want to assert that it has multiple economic benefits, because compared to other similar projects like the Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau, while they are still struggling to recover their annual operational costs, we can already pay back the whole investment in about 41 years, which shows our potential for profitability. And in addition, not even mention the increase in employment from the construction and the increase in the consumption from the causeway economic zone can also bring indirect economic profit. And in addition, thirdly, we also believe we will play an important role in the future, as we have a maximum capacity of covering over 75% of the total Euro-Asia trade route, making it less susceptible to political risk and reducing the total risk.
So finally, for something that I'm sure is on all of your minds, which was 2 and 4 from earlier, is our other risks. These are mainly divided into 2 categories: environmental and legal. Environmental, obviously, there are severe effects on the environment from such a bridge, but we believe that these effects can be mitigated via restoration of wetlands with 1 million or 5 million investments in sturgeon protection, both of which are small sums compared to the annual revenue of our project. Legal problems involving this disagreement from Russia, Iran, and also problems of international waters, i.e. whether the Caspian Sea, are also risks that we must address. But overall, we think that this investment is worth the risk. Thank you.
Thank you, China team. Now, question and answer time.
Thanks to Team China for the nice presentation. Can we please go to the timeline slide where you have project timelines?
Which slide?
Project timelines, the project timelines map planning. This one. So as far as I understand, you only start engineering and construction works effective from 2035. Don't you think that that would be too late and would end up losing the momentum opportunity?
Well, we start our project at like 2035 is mainly because we have to ensure the safety of this project. You can see that basically we have to ensure the safety and feasibility of this project and doing some like financial research to like forming a team doing financial research, and also to ensure the feasibility and like the safety of this project in basically in 2025 to 2030. Yeah, that's the basic process we have to do first.
In terms of like whether we will lose like more shares if we start late, what we believe is that maybe after a construction at 2035, starting the real operation from 2045 is like the real exact, like a pretty reasonable time, because currently, although there are also diversions from northern and southern corridors, but currently with the ferry service in the current middle corridor, they are already able to cover like all these diverted volumes. But then starting from 2045, what we believe as diversion increases is probably not the current ferry service cannot support all these capacity. So I think starting from 2045 doesn't greatly reduce our market opportunities, because the capacity of the current issue is already pretty limited. So yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable estimate.
Okay, thank you very much. And the second question is more of an imagination question. Imagine that you are on the 3rd year of your construction works. You've already spent about 20% of your total capex requirements, and over this period of time, there are global developments that make northern route and southern route more favorable, and your middle corridor less attractive. What would be your reaction? What sort of modification you would make to your plans? Would you stop construction? Would you make alternative decisions?
Okay, so first of all, I think in terms of like the increasing attraction from the northern and southern corridors, I think that is not the major problem that we are currently worrying, because according to our estimation, we can reduce the transit times by more than 50% compared to the northern and southern corridor, but at the same time, we can kind of maintain a similar level of cost for the northern and southern corridors. So I think in the future, our biggest competitors is from the maritime Suez Canal in the southern parts, because they have a pretty low cost because they have shipments. But however, their biggest disadvantage is that they have a very long transportation time, about 45 days, while our project can, in the fastest case, can only takes about like 15 days. So I think in the future, it should be like a trade-off between time efficiency and cost, and I think our major consumers is the one that was more time sensitive goods that could be potentially be our future, the major freight volume.
In addition, we will actually start the project in 2035, which gives us additional 10 years to evaluate the geopolitical situation, and we actually include 15% to 20% risk budget in our budget. When we calculate the net present value, we actually included 15% for the potential risk that can come with the geopolitical changes that may happen in the future. So we believe that will be sufficient to address the problem.
And just to briefly kind of address your question directly, we think that if these northern and southern corridors, the issues are resolved, our main strategy would be to proceed with construction as usual, but perhaps maybe speed it up a bit in order to entice more consumer flow in a shorter period of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In your financial model, what are your key drivers or revenue?
So for the revenues,
top 3 key revenue drivers.
Okay, top 3 key revenue drivers. First of all, logistics revenues like the tolls and tariffs. Second of all is the consumption revenues from the causeway economic zone developed by around the causeways. And third of all is like other revenues like the fees charged for like parking and others.
How much the first one, like the freight revenue driver?
Oh, for the logistics one?
Like when you will start generating the revenue, cash?
Oh, 2045.
But in your model, and how you adjusted, like now we are in 2025, right?
Yeah.
And you will start generating the cash in 2045. What are your key changes and assumptions you apply to your financial model in 20 years after from this date?
Okay, so for logistics model, I think the biggest assumption is an annual growth rate of trade traffic by 3%. And based on that assumption, we can project the total volume, which is about 30 million tons in 2045. Yeah, that's our biggest assumption.
Okay, thank you.
No more question. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Now give a big warm welcome to our day of final team, Canada.
Before we start, we'd just like to thank all the judges for being here. I know it's been a really long afternoon, so we really appreciate your patience.
Centuries ago, the Silk Road brought together empires across Eurasia. Today, the modern predecessor, the Middle Corridor, is slowly growing very, very fast. And what's currently happening is that they're facing a huge bottleneck with the Caspian Sea. My name is Shirley.
I'm Eric.
I'm Marius. I'm Andy.
And I'm Linus.
We are Team Canada, and here we're going to present our solution on how we're going to turn this historical site into a major trade route. So to start off, I want to first explain that we need to build this Caspian connection in the first place. And what we've considered many different alternatives and different opportunities to what would work best. And our alternative is that we think it's best to build directly to Turkmenistan and up towards Kazakhstan in order to have the most realistic approach to this solution. And how this is going to work is that we're going to have a payback period of around 24.8 years with a reduction of 35% from Europe to China transit times, as well as being able to diversify both countries' economies away from things like oil exports. So I want to explain now why this is such a great opportunity for both countries. Well, obviously we know that the Middle Corridor is positioned as a huge opportunity. We have immense amounts of investment with the EU and China with the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as an increased demand for the route as it's the only politically stable one compared to the Northern Corridor as well as the Southern Corridor, avoiding things like Russian, Ukraine, and also Iran sanctions. And also we have a projected demand of up to 11 million tons by 2030, which is triple. And also we have an exponential growth of 74%, which is outpacing the early stages of growth of any other legacy route. We also have no legal limitations, and the only thing we need to consider is that on the map, the top and bottom parts are usually going to be disputed by Russia and also Iran. So we only need to build through the middle, and we just need to make sure our bridges are tall enough in order to make sure that boats can pass through. So the thing is that they're unable to take this opportunity right now. Why is this the case? It's because they have immense long port delays, which makes them extremely unreliable, huge price instabilities, and also intermodal friction, which means that they have to go system to system, which is incredibly inefficient, and also they're currently nearing capacity. So the thing is, a Caspian Sea connection is incredibly beneficial though. It solves all the bottlenecks and cuts a lot of the costs, but also has a lot of spillover benefits in terms of the reinvestment cycle that you end up creating. So you collect the toll fees, and you put them back into attracting value-added firms where you boost your margins on all your exports you make, where it goes into your facility upgrades, which allows you to have export diversification and allows you to also have geopolitical leverage, as this is a place where you only have one of two countries controlling this very major important route.
Right, so how will our solution look like? We analyzed 4 different organizational structures, being a joint venture, a PPP, SOE, and a multinational development authority. So highlighting the joint venture, so what this allows is, it allows for shared funding and financial accountability, also allows for streamlining of operations and logistics across borders, and finally, allows us to access multilateral support. Now, historical precedents with Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, the shared ventures is our best model. So currently 3 weeks ago, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan started their green energy venture. And from historical precedents, we believe that this model allows us to best access and leverage the existing political infrastructure.
Right, so now let's take a quick look at what's been proposed by the case itself. So when we take a look at this depth chart right here, what you'll notice is that for making a bridge between Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, with the proposed solution of either Outkau or Kurik, you would have to go through a bridge that takes about 600 kilometers of length and goes through waters that are about 600 or 700 meters deep. No matter how you try to optimize it, and we've looked at several different points, the most optimal being at the southernmost point of the coast of Kazakhstan, you would have to go for about 280 kilometers of bridge and would have to pass over waters of about 250 meters in depth. Now, that's obviously a big problem. That being because of the fact that the world's longest overwater sea bridge is only 55 kilometers and the deepest sea bridge is only about 127 meters. On top of these logistical problems, you're going to have the fact that building over the northern bases, as you would to get through to Kazakhstan, would require you to build through a lot of marine life on top of building through some of the finest silt in the Caspian Sea, bringing with it both mechanical instability and significant environmental issues. What this highlights is that with current infrastructural technology, it is impossible to take on such a project, even with any sort of additional and supporting technology that you might include, such as pontoons, floating islands, or tunnels. When you look at pontoons, those are often very, very temporary on top of only being able to traverse short distances. Tunnels are exponentially more expensive the longer things get, and floating islands with their ports are only really capable of working within shallower waters.
However, we believe that rejection is redirection, introducing the new jewel of the Caspian Sea, the Caspian Rail and Transat, or CARAT. Don't worry, this is not fool's gold. We've considered a whole range of alternatives, maximizing both their feasibility and their impact. Among these, on one hand, the current Caspian connection is not at all possible just because of its record-breaking depths. On the other hand, alternatives that completely abandon it, for example, just building existing land rail or building upon infrastructure, will barely tip the needle just because of the magnitude of the Caspian bottleneck. That is why we have identified a new potential alternative. We've analyzed a whole range of potential routes between all possible starting locations, and we found one optimal one, which goes to Turkmenistan. And this will not only halve the distance to 170 kilometers, but completely avoids all the deepest parts of the ocean, and the deepest part is only 100 meters. This makes it so that the project is incredibly feasible, and we've also considered a range of alternatives and factors, including the depth, the length, the seafloor condition, and the legal and ecological costs. And among these, this route is minimizes all of those and is the most optimal. We also didn't just divide this sort of randomly. In order to get this path, we first avoided all the parts that are technologically impossible, so depths over 150 meters. Then we sought to minimize the sea distance, because any bridge built over sea is exponentially more expensive and costs hundreds of the same distance over sea bridges. This is where our key innovation comes in, because we don't only just find the shortest distance, that is a little bit too simple. Our key innovation involves identifying the island of Baku, Shilov, and this allows us to segment our bridge from one massive long one to two far more manageable ones, and this massively reduces the cost given how exponentially expensive longer bridges are. And finally, a further benefit is that we're able to connect this to Turkmenistan, and there's already an existing station in Turkmenbashi, so we'll be able to connect it to the existing TR-TR network.
Right, so where is the cargo going to go after reaching Turkmenistan? There's two routes. One, go through Kazakhstan to China, or second, go through Turkmenistan, then to Kazakhstan, then to China. Now, China's also developing a secondary railway through Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan that can manage overflow capacity. And the trilateral joint structure of our venture will help us minimize the costs and streamline operations. Now, for short-term implementations, other than our long-term recommendation, we have two strategic recommendations to make. One is IoT technology that allows real-time tracking of cargo that can maybe even automate supply chains. And second is to increase the transmodal transition infrastructure that will help us reduce port delays.
Now, moving on to our timeline and finances, we have projected our total implementation schedule to span a total of 20 years. Now, as you can see, this will be split up into 3 different operational segments, then split up into 3 different time phases, those being 5 years of planning and negotiations, which will actually be sped up by the existing green energy joint ventures, then 20 years of continuous construction, followed by 5 years at the end of optimizing the operational capacity. Now, if we also take a look at the revenue scheme of our project, because CARE is based on a 3-way joint venture, this actually allows us to take advantage of a novel revenue opportunity, and this is particularly seen through the fact that this project will be able to gain revenue not only through the new revenue streams generated from the bridge's tolls itself, but also because it spikes so much demand for the middle corridor as a whole, as a viable alternative for international trade, it will also generate significantly more revenue from the tolls of existing railways in countries like Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. And we could further see the financial viability of this by looking at its payback period, which is actually best of its kind. In fact, when we compare to other water-based bridges, such as HZMB, we actually see that CARAT has the best payback period amongst these projects, meaning that even by most conservative estimates, we can safely say that this project will bring about tremendous financial and economic gain for both consumers and governments. Now, if you would like to have any inquiries on this financial model or any other financial models we have used, please feel free to ask at the end.
Awesome, and now finally taking a quick look at the risk mitigation. So for the risk mitigation, we've kind of gone down 3 main avenues of attack. Those being, first things first, instability, then the unfeasibility of building at high depths, and finally the geopolitical tensions that are in the region inherent with conflicts with Russia and Iran. Now, taking a look at the instability mostly is going to be focusing on the fact that the Caspian Sea's seabed is largely filled with relatively fine silt. Now, as it happens, our bridge to Turkmenistan crosses over some of the most compacted silt in the region. But to further bring stability, we'll use things like SPCT testing to bring more strength to the model. Finally, for deep sea construction, we're going to have things like bathymetric testing, and for geopolitical tensions, we're going to leverage China and Kazakhstan routes. Thank you so much.
We'd be happy to take any questions now.
Canada team, thank you so much for your great presentation. So regarding with the risks, about the quantification, how did you consider the quantified amounts in your financial estimations, or have you?
Thank you. So just to clarify the questions about our finances and the quantification, correct? Okay, perfect. I'd love to answer that. So first we've identified the costs, and to project this, we use similar projects in the past, and this is a very realistic figure. So we analyzed the different types of bridges that would cost, and the cost is around several hundred million per kilometer, but those bridges are also a lot shorter. Because our bridge is a lot longer, we projected the cost to be more, around 650 million per kilometer, just to be conservative. In terms of our revenue streams, as we mentioned, we have two separate revenue streams. First from the tolls, and second from the direct tolls, and second from the additional tolls. So for the direct tolls, there's two separate tolls that you have to make. First is the westward route, and second is the eastward route. So the eastward route currently apparently charges more tariffs, and to get these figures, we just used so how we did the pricing was that we took the current cost of the ferry, so how long it would take to go from one of the ports to the other port currently by the ferry pricing, and we set our new price approximately equal to that or at a slight discount, and this would incentivize more people to use it because it saves far more time compared to the ferry, so that's why we're able to set the toll at that price. In order to see the toll revenue, we just use multiply the toll by the amount of capacity utilization, and to derive the capacity utilization, we simply just did calculations regarding the capacity of our railway, and that would be, as you see at the top, by current guidelines, a double track rail, which is what we would use, would be able to accommodate 64 trains per day. And because of that, we can get our amount of annual million tons that we'd be able to support. And then from there, all of our revenues can be estimated.
Thank you so much. And can I see your discount rate or WACC?
The DCF, right?
Yeah, no, discount rate.
Weighted average cost of capital, WACC.
WACC, yes, this one. 8.9. How did you come up to this figure? Like I see that equity, but from the risk perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much. So to clarify your question, you're asking how we came up with this exact WACC figure of 8.9%. Brilliant. Okay, so first of all, to begin with the calculation for this WACC figure, we identified the ratio of financing from debt and equity that we would use for this project. Now, when we talk about this, it's worth noting first that Azerbaijan, as a major oil supplier in the region, has a much higher than average amount of fiscal reserves. And so this essentially means that it is feasible to finance this with slightly more equity than you would regularly see. Typically, you'd see perhaps like a 70 to 30 debt to equity ratio. In this case, we're going with a 60-40 debt equity ratio as it takes advantage of Azerbaijan's already plenty fiscal supplies. Now, in reference to the particular supply of debt in this case, this debt will mostly come in the form of loans and other forms of credit lines that are directly connected to Chinese policy bonds for the One Belt, One Road initiative, right? And this is really, really important to note because Chinese policy bonds have actually been issued historically in many examples at interest rates that can even reach like exactly 0% or are very, very close to 0%, right? And I could bring up examples like in Egypt, Nigeria and Ethiopia, where this has actually been the case, and it allows these countries, especially because the maturity times and the grace periods are also so high, it allows these countries to effectively pay back these loans, right? And so in this case, for example, the maturity time is estimated to be around 20 years for a standard Chinese policy loan that would be so pertinent to their construction of the Belt and Road Initiative. And so what that means is, combined with our payback period of 24.8 years, we will essentially be able to feasibly pay back all of this loan that we take out, the debt financing that we use, without even having much interest to pay back at all in that time frame in a reasonable percentage amount. So that is ultimately why we went about this specific combination of debt to equity financing and the avenues in which we will finance this debt.
Team Canada, 2 questions. The first one is about the quantification of the original idea. I know conceptually you didn't prefer Kazakh-Azerbaijan route, but have you financially estimated it or not? The second question is about convincing stakeholders to move the traffic from existing Kazakhstan-Azerbaijan route to the newly built, totally alternative, let's say scenario, alternative idea of Chilov-Turkmenbashi, or Karat as you call it.
Yeah, those are lovely questions, and I'd be really glad to answer them. So in terms of the cost for the original bridge, we didn't do a full DCF on this because we wanted to divert your attention to our proposal, but we did do analysis of our own, and we found that basically the cost would be in the hundreds of billions, contrary to some other proposals you might have heard. And this cost is, the reason is simply because if you look at an existing project like Hong Kong's bridge, which is the world's currently longest at 55 kilometers, that one costed about 300 million per kilometer to build, right? And the bridge that you're building in the original proposal is about 6 times longer than that. So 6 times longer than the world's longest bridge. And then you're building a bridge that is going over depths that are like 600 meters, and the current world's deepest is only 125 meters. That means that you don't have the existing technology to build that deep. So you would have to put significant amounts of money into R&D to first research anything that could possibly even make that logistically possible, and then you would have to finance that, which would be several more times more costly than the current sort of cost that we have. So overall, that would give a multiplier of about, like, at the very, very least, being the most generous, like 6 times. So that would mean that your total cost would be at the very least around 600 billions, and this be using very realistic figures. In regards to your second question, sorry, could you repeat it again?
Is convincing the stakeholders to move the traffic from the existing routes to your newly built route?
Yes, so we have considered this, and currently the middle corridor only takes up 5% of the existing volume moving through the northern corridor through Russia. So currently there's only around 4 million tons per year. In Russia, there's over 100 million tons per year. That means that the demand from China is relatively inelastic, and it's very, very high. That means that any capacity that we're able to improve in the middle section will drastically increase demand. So we wouldn't really need to advertise it per se, because the current constraint is not that they don't want to do it, but simply because they can't do it because of the bottlenecks. If we're able to increase that bottleneck, then the demand will be relatively basically full, and this also means that the current port will still be utilized because they would still want to use the middle corridor because it's geographically the shortest and the fastest way to go from China to Europe. So therefore, the demand would be basically whatever capacity we're able to have.
And if you want some numbers on that, we projected that if we were to build our route, we would be able to save 35% of the time on Asia to Europe transit, so 7 days, and currently Eurasian transit currently takes around 20 days.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all our finalist team and to our jury for their time and thoughtful evaluation. We truly appreciated you all. Okay, we will share with you top three. Just we need 1 or 2 minutes. Please just wait. Thank you for your understanding.
So, are we ready, guys? Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay, first of all, on behalf of jury members, let me thank organizers and you participants staying with us for entire day. I know it's a lengthy day. It's really been, a tiring day for all of us. But I think some of you will be having a better day as a result of announcement. So let me start with the number 3. Based on the votes of the valuable jury members, team number 3, the team that is taking 3rd place in Baku tonight, is Singapore. Congratulations to Singapore team who joined us online via Zoom. I know it's not easy. It's better to be in person and present here. So now we're moving to team number 2. So we have 2 teams. One of them is in the 2nd place. One of them is a winner. The teams we've got: Mexico and Canada. And one of them is the winner. And one of them is taking the 2nd place. So now I'm going to announce 2nd team first. Okay, we've got winner, Canada, congratulations. And we've got Mexico taking a 2nd place. Congrats and thank you very much for impressive presentations. Good luck. Good luck to all finalists and all other teams. Thank you very much.